Let's talk about your book.
Now, never, or at the very last second. I think it's cheapest in WH Smith.
Okay.
Just by the way.
Could you share a difficult situation in your life, how you've navigated through it?
There was kind of harassment and stalking for 2 years until I was 14. It takes an average 7 times for someone to leave a domestically abusive relationship.
And where did you find the happiness?
I'd met my current partner, Ryan, when I was at Ryder. He's not my happiness. I don't think anyone should be someone's happiness. You have to find that somewhere in you. 1, someone stayed. 2, someone knew me and stayed. And 3, it was just like, you're so patient, you're so like, we'll be Ariel. Ariel's gonna try it a different way. Ariel's gonna know that she loves writing. She knows that she's creative. She knows that she's passionate and wants to talk about things eventually. So we're just gonna give her the opportunity.
A huge thank you to this week's sponsor, Beckhoff Automation. Beckhoff implements open automation systems using proven PC-based control technology. You can find out more about Beckhoff in the link below. Also, thank you to you for watching. Please like, subscribe, it helps us grow the channel. Enjoy this episode.
Okay, so I'm Ariel. I work at Schubert UK, and I'm in marketing. I've worked in marketing for 4 or 5 years now, maybe. Yeah, that's.
And a published author.
And a published author. Yeah, that's very recent. That's like the childhood dream goal type of thing. But yeah, a published author.
Okay, so who are Schubert?
Schubert are a packaging machinery and technology company. So they're premium brand, but they essentially supply like the food industry, pharma, pet food, that kind of thing, and do that kind of secondary packaging process.
Okay.
So anything in like a supermarket. Supermarkets are ruined for me now because you go in the aisles and I'm looking at all the different like formats and all the different, oh, that's a flow wrapper and that's that. And it's just like, oh God. But anything you see in like a supermarket typically will be packaged by Schubert.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who and what are you responsible for?
So I'm responsible for all of the marketing within the UK. So we're a German company, but I manage the UK subsidiary. And anything that falls under the remit of branding, marketing, protecting our image and our position in the marketplace and that kind of thing falls under my remit. Don't know how much of a good job I'm doing of it, but you know. So yeah, that's what I'm responsible for.
Okay. Now, I read that you had an interesting career path. So I want to go right back to the start.
Okay.
Where did you grow up and what did you want to be when you were older?
So I grew up in Marston Green, which is a little village in Birmingham. And it was a little village because when I grew up, there was like a little field with the cows and like an old little wine lodge and all that kind of really old ilk. But I was desperate to be an infant school teacher when I was growing up. I did like child development at school, did work experience in the local school, and then quickly realised that's like the worst thing in the world I can imagine. But yeah, I was desperate, like tunnel visioned on being a school teacher when I was younger. Okay.
Do you have a favourite memory from childhood?
A favourite memory from childhood? I think weirdly, little things like, so I have a younger sister and I would do a lot of the kind of motherly duties, I suppose, with her. But some of my favourite ones are literally picking her up from school, bringing her home, and we do like homework together and even like bath her and things like that. She'd have like little bath bombs. So anything that involved my little sister growing up was just, yeah.
You still close now?
Yes. And ironically, she's a SEND teacher for SEND children.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we're still close. Probably too close for her liking, but I'm fine with it.
So tell us about your first jobs then.
Oh, God, right. So I first started, this is going to be all over the shop. Yeah. I first started when I was 15 working, doing some modelling, which was really rogue for me at the time because I was a tall, frizzy-haired, slightly chubby child in school. So then to kind of be in that line of work was a bit rogue. done that for years, for about 10 years actually, recently kind of retired from it. But then I'd worked as a receptionist temporarily while I'd come out of uni, and I was a fashion editor through the kind of modelling when I was in uni, and was just desperately trying to find my feet in different things. I'd waitressed for a summer, and I think when you fall out of uni, you expect to fall into the line of work that you want to do, and it's as easy as you get a degree and the next day you get a job.
Yeah.
Whereas I was just all over the shop, and then finally fell into kind of office roles,
Okay.
which was positive. I had a stint at Network Rail, which was interesting, but that was actually the kind of turning moment in my career where it was like, I'm actually interested in this sort of thing and not all of this fashion and all of that kind of stuff.
So what was it that happened at that job?
It was, so I was working I initially was temporarily a receptionist there for 2 weeks, and then I found out that the PR and marketing team were downstairs. So naturally I went and irritated them until they'd let me work in their team. And it was only like a 2-month contract stint. But at the time, they came under fire a little bit for kind of cutting down trees along the railways. And there was this argument with a kind of environmentalists who were saying you can't cut down trees, but then from their perspective, they were saying if we don't, we can't run the trains. And it sounds really rogue and it sounds a bit weird, and it was, but it was the first time that I'd been able to kind of apply my skill set or my interest in marketing to an actual problem that needed to be solved that had a wider effect than what skirt to put with what top, and if your lipstick is right for your skin and all that kind of stuff. So it was this kind of, I mean, we had, I think it was my boss at the time had gone on like BBC News or something like that to talk about it, but it was this, how do we fix the problem? But we have to protect ourselves and that brand and our objective without upsetting too many people. But it was that nature of, I don't really understand the problem or the mechanics, or I never had an interest in trains particularly, but there was a problem to be solved that was further out from my own capacity. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, this is quite interesting.
So what happened next?
Well, it was difficult because as I said, I only did the 2-month stint there, so I'd actually went while that was still going through. It came to the fact where it was a matter of, we have to do what we have to do. If there are trees in the way, we have to cut them down, because if we don't, the trains won't run, and then everyone will be upset because the trains aren't running or they're delayed for work and that kind of thing. So it was a matter of, we kind of just have to stand by ourselves, but the publicity around that and the communications around that, whether it was online and answering people online, or how we phrase our objective, was that kind of like, well, how do we do that? But ultimately we kind of just stuck to our own objective, and it was, yeah.
So the 2 months end, what was the next job?
What was the next job after that? I did some more temp work as a receptionist, and then my proper next job was at a company called Ryder, and they don't operate in the UK anymore, but they're a truck company. Somehow I fell into automotive, and I just was kind of a PA for 5 directors there, and it was a great organisation. The directors were lovely, but the job was as bland as it comes. It was like taking minutes for a meeting, and if there's not a meeting, I don't have anything to do. So I was like birthday shopping for some of their wives and things like that. And in my head, I'm thinking, if I was the wife, I would not be best pleased. But I was there for about 1.5 years, and then went to PM Group. That was an interesting period, but that was my proper office job, Ryder, full-time PA.
Okay, so PM, was that marketing?
PM Group was my first kind of proper marketing.
How did you get into marketing then? So obviously you've had the 2 months experience, but
I'd had the 2 months experience, but I'd worked as a fashion editor before during university, which was good experience in terms of managing this kind of magazine and understanding socials and trends and how to put content together and that sort of thing. But I got my degree in media communications, and then was hell-bent on doing my master's degree. But I didn't actually have that when I interviewed for PM Group. It was like a sales and marketing assistant position that went into kind of an executive role. And I think they just wanted someone that would be able to do the admin, but have an interest in marketing and pick things up as they went along. And I was just like wide-eyed, like, yeah, I'm interested, hire me. And then my first interview with them was like 2 hours long. And in my head, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, like, I've just bored them to death. I'm not going to get the job. But yeah, so that was getting into marketing, and that was all. And that was a project delivery company, so that was all engineers and architects and building aseptic facilities and different things like that, which was just a whole world that my marketing brain could not comprehend at the time.
Was that your first view of manufacturing?
Yeah, that was my first view of manufacturing, and it was really interesting because I think I was interested in that position because at the time there was like two routes. There was that position that had came up, and then there was one for like a fashion buyer, which I was more likely to get, but I didn't really have an interest in procurement or fashion. But going into PM Group, and I look back on Network Rail and was like, I was so interested and so willing to work because I didn't understand how to get from A to B, and I didn't understand even some of the concepts between A and B. So PM Group was this, I don't know manufacturing. I'm from a whole other world with very limited exposure to anything that's not surface level, I suppose. And then it was a whole like wide world. I got to visit a few different facilities, and it's so different. It's massive. It's huge.
It's amazing.
Like, yeah, and I was saying before actually that if you ever wanted to like time travel into the future as a child, work in manufacturing, because people think that these facilities are dingy. And I visited a facility with Schubert, and they think that these facilities are dingy, and you think it's like dirty and all that kind of. But I'm like walking in and I've got my hairnet on and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, oh my God, this is how does this work? How does that do that? And so it's a bit nerdy in like my interest, but yeah, I love it.
What can manufacturing learn from your experience of social media and marketing outside of industry? Because you know Engineers Insight is a little bit different to traditional methods. We want to disrupt how things work. Social media is almost ignored by an aging population of manufacturing, let's say. So what do you learn outside of manufacturing that you're bringing to your role at Schubert that's a little bit different?
I think it's difficult because you've almost got to balance a few different things. So first of all, social media and the audiences on social media and consumers will dictate these different platforms and almost the success of different things. And they won't willingly do that. They will just consume, or they won't, and that's their choice. And I think people have to lean into the audience that exists. I don't think it's a matter of trying to target an older audience. It's going, this audience are here and they love to consume content, and they may have this interest that overlaps. So we need to see individuals as a kind of whole person, not as someone who works in manufacturing and that's just their identity. So I think everything overlaps. If you think that I'm a consumer, you're a consumer, like everything overlaps. We are not identified as one single thing. I work in marketing, but I'm not a marketeer, if that makes sense. So I think you have to lean into the kind of full breadth of a person and understand they're going to have problems going into an industry that's still predominantly older people and predominantly older men. So how can you be sympathetic towards those things, but also give them a little something to play with? And I think with Schubert, the way that I'm trying to push the branding and push the position in the UK is I understand that our audience are kind of high stress individuals and they're working on big projects. There's a lot of money at play and there's a lot of things that can go wrong but a lot of things that can go right. So you have to be really sensitive toward that. You have to understand your audience. But that's not all they are. These are people with families and children, and they're married and they care about how much time they can spend outside of work. So it's being fun and playful with the way that you communicate things. It's not just a straight, you work in manufacturing, I'm going to show you a manufacturing facility. Because they'll know what it looks like, but they want the rest of themselves to be seen, if that makes sense. So I think it's a balance of understanding your audience, knowing that they are almost in charge to a certain extent, and then feeding into their likes, their dislikes, their passions, their pain points, the things that make them happy, the things that bring them joy. How can you talk about that in a way that can then impact how willing they are to work, how much they bring creativity into that position? And I think people associate creativity with authors and designers and artists, but manufacturing is so creative. But I think we've almost just gotten rid of the creative and we've just gone, they're logical and they're this and they're that, which they are. But manufacturing takes so much creative thinking and it's problem solving, and push that back into it and let them be creative and let them consume creative content that's gonna,
So that creative content that you're creating, Schubert, where are you posting it?
So I post predominantly on LinkedIn at the moment. So we're doing some work in the background with our website and that kind of thing. And we have two audiences. So we have one on Instagram, which I don't particularly feed into because it doesn't support our objectives for the UK. And that's fundamentally what I need to, that's kind of like my baby. But where I post is LinkedIn. And like it's ironic because one of our best performing posts was about a dog. I went on a plane coming back from a work trip and there was a dog on the plane, and in my head I'm going, we're in the pet food sector and there's a dog on the plane. I have to take a picture of the dog on the plane and then I'll figure out the rest of it when I'm at home. And I gave this dog like a hypothetical name, and this dog loved Schubert packaged pet food. And it's like so stupid, but it was one of our best performing posts because our audience are older and they are on LinkedIn and they're interested in, and LinkedIn is changing in itself, but they are people with pets that their kid is probably going to look and go, oh my God, there's a dog on the plane. I just also happen to be 27 going, oh my God, there's a dog on the plane. So
I think the frustration in industry is marketing, or people that do marketing part-time as part of their other jobs. They're so one-dimensional of, this is the widget we sell, do you want to buy it? And not understanding the value it creates for the consumer. So it's the reason that we do this is because I was bored of seeing the usual sales videos on LinkedIn of someone stood there awkwardly, very rigid, saying, we sell XYZ.
Yeah.
Expecting someone's going to watch that and think, oh, I'm going to buy XYZ, that sounds great. When actually, people want to listen to a story. And they might buy into you or Schubert in the future, but they've sat and watched this for half an hour to know your story. Instead of flicking past a 10-second clip of someone awkwardly stood there in a striped suit.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. People are extensions of their companies to a certain extent, especially like myself in marketing. I am an extension of Schubert, and how I handle myself, I guess, in a way is a reflection of the company to an extent. So you have to be like aware of that. But I think it, like you say, I think especially in the UK, because I've learned a lot from international markets given the fact that we're a German company, we've got kind of subsidiaries in different areas. In the UK, we are very much solution driven. Like if I'm selling you something, if I'm selling you a new camera, you're only going to need a new camera if your one's broken or it doesn't work or there's something wrong with it, or there's something about this that's going to give you an added benefit to what you're trying to do. I can't just sit there and go, I know you like to record, so camera, and this one, possibly. It's just not going to land. Whereas I think what you're doing here is solution driven. You are providing an answer or providing a solution or providing a service. And I think people try and sell, and like you say, it's a kind of suited and booted, we sell this and it's great. And it's like, you can't just say it's great. I need to believe it's great. And that could be from the person. It could be the relationship you build with the individual who's selling it to you. It could be the fact that it just is great and you've communicated that well. But like I always say, as a person in marketing, my concern isn't with the price point of something. Like, it doesn't matter to me necessarily if it costs £10 or £100. My concern is how I communicate that. What is the value? If I'm asking you to pay £100 for this thing, when this person's selling it for 10, I need to tell you why it's £100 or what's the value, because there's got to be something there. So it's that kind of thing, I suppose.
Okay, let's talk about your book.
Oh God.
Give us the name.
So it's called Now, Never, or At the Very Last Second.
Okay.
A very convoluted title. I didn't think that one well. But it's about two orphan sisters. And there's a likeness to the two sisters in the book to my relationship with my sister Becca. Two older one, younger one. The younger one actually goes to Loughborough University, so quite close. But she just starts meddling in her older sister's life because her older sister's just like a bit of a wreck. She's just having a real time of it. And then all of these kind of secrets come out, but it's total rom-com-y. Like if you like like book talk, I don't know if you've heard of book talk. Yeah, it's like typical book talk, or what you would expect from someone like me to write. So yeah.
Okay. How does someone go about getting a book published?
It was weird. So I've always loved writing. I found writing when I was 16. I started writing poetry and blogs and had like a secret blog and used it to kind of as a coping mechanism, I suppose. It's now the way that I interpret the world. And I was ill at the time of starting to write this book. Very depressed, mental health was bad, just in a real bad place. So these characters came to my head and I started writing a few chapters just to kill some time, I suppose, because that's just what you do. I'd Googled and had to look into literary agents, because publishers' housings they will either go direct to an author, or you can have a literary agent and the agent will work with the publishing house and present books and that sort of thing. So I was seeing who would take in new authors at the time, who would possibly be interested in some weird book by some like young 20s girl. And then sent off a few chapters to a few publishing houses. Few didn't want me, which like is perfectly fine. You're never going to get 100% and all that kind of stuff. But a couple came back, and then one of them said, "Can you finish the book?" I was like, didn't anticipate that one, that's weird. So I ended up finishing the book about 8 or so months later. It took a year to write. And then it was like, well, I've written it now. And I always wanted to write a book. I never necessarily wanted to publish a book. I wanted to write a book. So as far as I was concerned, I'd like checked that off. I'd written a book and I was proud of it. But then sent it on to them. I was like, it's finished, please like it. Like, my self-esteem rests on this. And then it was like, oh yeah, we love it. Can we publish it? And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna say no. So yeah, it was a weird process. But bit of research, you have to do something, you have to be interested in it.
Yep.
You have to stand by it.
And what's happened? Has anything happened since? It's now in public domain, isn't it?
It's now in public domain, so it's like on Amazon, WH Smith, and Waterstones. I think it's cheapest in WH Smith.
Okay.
Just by the way. But I've had like some interviews with different like people on the back of it to talk about the book. But people can buy it, and my mum is desperate to get me to sign a book because they gave me like 20 copies for free. And I'm like, I don't know 20 people that are going to want this. It's like, and now I've just got a whole host of books in my place.
Why don't, off the back of this, you do a LinkedIn post where you say, these are 20 or 15, give 5 to family or something.
Yeah.
15 that I've signed, you've got to like and follow our Schubert page or something.
See, that would be really good. But what happens if everyone goes, I don't actually care about that. It's like, what do I want that book for? It's terrible. But it made me laugh because I gave a copy to my nan because she wanted one. And she called me like 5 days or so afterwards. She went, I read the book. Like, okay, what did you think? And so there's like a couple of chapters in there that are a little bit like fruity, I suppose. And she called me and was like, well, I told the neighbour about it and she wanted to give one to the nunnery because it's a local nunnery. She went, but I told her she couldn't take it to them. And I was like, no, it's not that bad, is it? She's like, well, I'm just hoping it's all wishful thinking. I was like, God.
But it's a hell of an achievement.
It doesn't feel... The way I describe it is, because the characters are so real in my head, they are fully fleshed out people. I am just like so proud of them, if that makes sense. Like the main character, Avery, who's the older sister, and Ivy, who's the younger sister. Like, I am so proud of them because they've like Avery's worked things out, Ivy's doing great, and it doesn't feel like, I know it's my achievement, I know I sat and wrote it, but I almost wrote it for them. It's their story, so I'm like, oh, Avery, you did great, kind of thing. So yeah, it's weird.
But how much of them are you and your sister?
I think the relationship is me and my sister to a T, and that kind of like, because that's one of the overarching themes, is that kind of like, there's relationships in there and that kind of thing, but the two that stick together are the sisters. But I think Avery in the book is how I want to be in real life. She has qualities and possesses qualities that I don't, that I would like to have, I would like to be. So I think it's that kind of like manifesting a little bit of like, this is what I want to be, not what I am. Whereas Ivy is just sassy and just forthright and determined, and that's Becca. So yeah.
I read a piece that you did about reinventing yourself.
Yes.
So I'll read something to you.
Yeah, okay.
I was a recruitment consultant for 18 months. I was an admin assistant for 18 months. I've been on contract, a fashion editor, a content creator, and a social media guru. Now I'm a writer and a marketing professional with the ability to fight for gender equality and the voices of the women in my company as co-chair of the Women's Network. What's the Women's Network?
The Women's Network was my absolute pride and joy. When I worked at PM Group, I started off as co-chair and then I became chair when our co-chair left. And it was a community for the women in that company, and we tried to push it out for a community for women in general, to offer this kind of safe space where it was women supporting women. And I know that's such a phrase that people think is cringy and all that kind of thing, but it's necessary. But the Women's Network was, so there was some women in the company that didn't join it, and that's perfectly fine. But it was, whether it was graduates coming in through to kind of senior management, this group of women that we would host personal sessions, social sessions, we would, professional skills, or someone would just be able to pull me aside and go, Ariel, have I got 5 minutes? Have you got 5 minutes? And I always had 5 minutes, like whatever that was. But it was just a really vibrant community of incredibly talented women. And I was chair, but I think I learned so much more from them than they ever did from me. I kind of just facilitated it. But it was, when I left PM Group, that was the one thing I cried about, because I was like, but my goals. So.
Have you set something up at Schubert or not?
Not at Schubert, because in the UK we are a team of 20 people, and I am like 20 years younger than everybody else. So there's just not the appetite there, which is fine. And to be honest, Schubert doesn't need it. PM Group, you'd go into the office and it was, the culture was different, and it was so many different people that would come in and out each day. Whereas Schubert, it's a real nice core of women and men that support each other just by virtue. But I am trying to run something kind of like on LinkedIn with myself and my friend who works at PM Group, she's an architect, to create the women's network, to create something that's anyone can join from any industry and that kind of thing. Because what I did find with doing the women's network was there are so many women's networks set up in these kind of companies, in engineering companies and the manufacturing world, because it needs it. It does, and there's so much value in it. But then you don't get this you get like-minded people talking to like-minded people. You don't get this influence of people who have no experience in manufacturing, but they might be interested, or they work over here and they don't want to work in manufacturing, but you can still learn the skill sets. So that's the objective now. But I was too busy writing a book to do much with it at the moment.
Okay, so there was that I picked up in that extract of reinventing yourself. There's also that reinventing yourself and changing career paths and changing jobs. There's a stigma, not just in industry, in business, that people look at CVs and think you're just job hopping. Was you worried about that at any point in your career? You changed?
Yes, but not enough to stay somewhere that was going to hinder myself. Because when I wrote that and talking about reinventing myself, I reinvented myself completely. I changed my name when I was 18 and started to create this kind of whole new identity to kind of split this girl from this person who's going to become, and this person who's forging her way. So I took reinventing myself so literally. It was just unnecessary. But I think with kind of job hopping and the way I looked at different things is I was always hell-bent on doing things that would serve me in some way. So like, I love marketing, I love my profession, and I've fallen on my feet by being able to work in that. And but job hopping was a concern. I think it's changing now anyway, so you don't get any more people who stay in a company for 20 years or they stay in the company for the same, like, for however long, and they retire. You don't get that so much. But I think if you know in your gut something's not working, something's not right, you're going home miserable, or you wake up thinking, God, I've got to go to work. You can't live that way. That's not sustainable. So at the risk of job hopping or being seen to have job hopped, if you can explain your choices and the reasoning why you did different things, then I think that's fine. Because it was actually a question, I think it was a question that came up in my PM Group interview. They said, look, you've moved a few times. How do I know you're gonna stay? And it was like, well, first of all, you kind of just have to trust me, because I don't have anything on paper to say I'm gonna stay. But I was easily able to say, well, you are offering me something worthwhile staying for.
Yep.
So as long as you can reason it and you know your own will and intent, then I think job hopping or seeming to have job hopped is worth it. It's not sustainable to be that miserable.
No, it's a great answer. The reason I asked wasn't to dig out your CV, it was I've done the same. I did the same, and I had the same attitude. It's worth more to me in the long run of making the change and to have an extra line on your CV. Who gives a shit?
Exactly. And I think it's one of them. If someone can't answer, if someone can't respond to that, and also, like, I think that what people don't realise as well is there are so many limitations that come with experience. There's you are limited by experience to a certain extent. If you can go into something new and you are present, enthusiastic, passionate, full of ideas, whether it's problem solving, whether it's something a little bit more technical and analytical, or whether it's like me going, I've got an idea about a dog on a plane, then if you can bring that and you're genuine with it, because people can tell if you're genuine or not, if you can bring that and you're genuine with that, people will respond. And if they still aren't interested, well then, just go on.
Their loss.
Yeah.
Could you share a difficult situation in your life, how you've navigated through it?
Okay, so how do I word it? So I think the hardest situation in my life, I grew up in my home with my mum, and my dad wasn't particularly around, and when he wasn't particularly nice. But while I kind of reinvented myself, I was 12 when it started. There was someone who was older, took a liking to myself, my way of saying it, and there was kind of harassment and stalking for 2 years until I was 14, and then unconsensually lost my virginity, which was interesting. And I think at the time I wasn't sure what really had happened. I knew that I was like, I'd been cut, and I knew that I had to go home, or I knew that kind of thing. And then for the years after, I'd made a mess of the whole situation and trying to come through it. There's no rule book or way of dealing with something like that. I'd tried to find control and piece different things together in different ways that I could, using eating as a tool and that sort of thing. But I think there was this sort of resilience of, you've got two choices in any situation, in any hurdle. Like, hurdles are an opportunity to show people who you really are. That's my phone.
You can turn it off.
Can I turn it off? Where is it? It would help if I knew where it was. No one ever calls me on my work phone. Oh, it's stopped now. Sorry about that. Yeah, hurdles are an opportunity to show who you kind of really are and what you can bring. And I think for me, there was these two choices of, you carry on down the path that you're going. And I remember I was in university at the time. I was 18, and my mum had sent me a card, and she was like, "Listen, you're gonna die if you carry on this route." Like, my hair had fallen out. It was just a mess. And she had actually written in the card, like, Becca needs her sister. Like, she's struggling. So you've got that route, or you've got it's not going great anyway, so we're just gonna try and find something that we like, find something that's gonna bring us a little bit of happiness, and go a day at a time and see what happens, because it cannot get any worse. So we'll just try, we'll just give it a go. And it was like this weird internal dialogue of kind of waking up and going, I'm tired, I guess we've got to try. And you go to the class, and you go to your day at work, and you do the things that check the boxes, and you take it a day at a time. And I think how I overcame it was that I guess that mentality that I still have. It's like, I can't stay here. Like, I cannot do this. And that's why I changed my name at the time, because I was like, I cannot stay, but I cannot go, in a way. And it was this, like, just almost like sleep paralysis in a way, like, where you just can't move, and it's like that sort of, like, just being stuck. I tried committing suicide, and even that wouldn't take me, so I was like, okay. So it was that, I can't go, I can't stay. Where do we go from here? So in my head, I'd changed my name, and it was, okay, right, we'll be Ariel. I don't know where that came from, but we'll be Ariel, and Ariel's going to try it a different way. Ariel's going to know that she loves writing. She knows that she's creative. She knows that she's passionate and wants to talk about things eventually. So we're just going to give her the opportunity. So it was, I think it's that mentality of, you're stuck anyway. So why not just give it a shot?
Yeah.
If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. You've literally got nothing to lose.
And where did you find the happiness?
It took, I don't really know, to be honest, because from then, so I was 18 when I changed my name, was with my ex-partner who I'd met when I was 16, but we got back in touch and was with him for a few years, and that was a really volatile relationship, like mother like daughter type of situation, and it takes an average 7 times for someone to leave a domestically abusive relationship, and I remember it took me 6, and I'd gone home and it was like, okay, and that was ironically just before I'd started PM Group. Within the space of a month, I moved house, started my master's degree, changed my job, rebuilt my relationship with my mom and Becca, and was like, okay, we're gonna give this a go. And I need to be stimulated. I've always needed to be stimulated in some way. So I think for me it was, I need to go back to writing because it's the way that I can conceive my life and deal with it in a way that's healthy. And then I get to go to work and learn something and be this person that no one knows. And it's really weird because I'm an expert at hiding in plain sight. And it's really thrilling, but it's also really lonely. And I'd learnt that and kind of navigated my way at PM Group with that kind of mentality. I'd met my current partner, Ryan, when I was at Ryder, and never has anyone been so gentle or patient toward me. I wrote him a letter. We got together on December 28th, and I wrote him a letter on January 14th, and it like had my entire life story in it. And I was like, just so you know, if you want to be with me, like, I am such a pain to deal with. Like, this is going to come up, this is going to come up, you're going to have to deal with this. It was like a whole list of like, and at the end I just wrote, if you want me to go, tell me to leave. And if you want me to stay, just come and give me a hug because I'm going to be crying. I'm sat at the end of his bed like, oh my God. And he just like hugged me. And it was like, 1, someone stayed. 2, someone knew me and stayed. And 3, it was just like, you're so patient, you're so like, and I think he's not my happiness. I don't think anyone should be someone's happiness. You have to find that somewhere in you, but they can navigate you toward it. And I think him and my profession and honouring my own interests and honouring my own things that were only ever going to serve me, things that were selfish in a way, helped me to find happiness. And like I don't want, my days are still a little bit here, there and everywhere sometimes. But I think people just give you a little bit of a nudge sometimes. But you are always a leader in that. And I think there's too much pressure on your best friend being your source of happiness, your partner being your source of happiness, your sister being your source of happiness. And it's great in an interim, but it is not their responsibility, and it's not fair on them, and it's not sustainable. So he always said to me, he's like, I can give you reassurance. I can tell you that I love you. I can say these things. So, but I'm not going to tell you, like I asked, like we had a conversation about reassurance one time, and he's like, if I give you reassurance every single day, the one day I don't give it to you, you're going to go freak out.
Yeah.
So it was, I think you just have to honour yourself. Start with something small. And then once you keep that promise to yourself, you will then keep another. And I'm now the kind of person that will keep promises to myself. Whether that's the fact that I'm going to go home later and I'm going to go to the gym, even though I'm not going to want to. But I'm also then going to come home and eat chocolate. So, but those are like 2 promises to myself kind of thing. So it's tiny things, but those tiny things make up who you are. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. It's a lot to offload, I suppose.
Yeah, I didn't really know where I was going halfway through that.
Okay. So I try and change the next question so it's a little bit more related to you personally. Because my next lot of questions is always about inspiring next generation, and it's normally very manufacturing. But why not use your experience, or you as a person, even if it's just as a writer or a marketer? How would you, if you were stood in front of a classroom of kids, whatever age, you can make that up in your head, what would you tell them about a career or life?
I think it's really bold to say inspire, because I think inspiration naturally is so caveated and different to different people. So there's no one way of inspiring someone, there's no one way of being inspirational. And I think if you try to be inspirational, you just miss the point completely. I think if I was in a classroom of kids, I think if it was them going into I'm thinking of like senior school age and them kind of looking toward their careers but feeling lost. The world is big and I have no place in it. Is that kind of think outside the limitations of experience. I think we're constantly told that Joe Bloggs, who's 50, that's got 20 years of experience, is going to be able to give you the A to Z on how to do this. And he's got his remit and he's going to be great at some of the things he does. But he's going to be so limited because he's got 20 years of one way of thinking. Anyone new that comes into a career or anyone new that comes into a company or in an industry has this whole breadth of not knowing. And that's like creativity thrives and ideas thrive. And Schubert have a Cobot. It's Cobot Tog 519, and it's this really cool piece of equipment. It does a lot of stuff, but the point of it is when Schubert made it, they hired someone and they did like a mini startup in the company and was like, we want to make something new. He'll eat it, do with it what you want. And the head of this department only hired graduates or people who were still students and like would use it towards their final projects, and people who had maybe had a couple of years experience, but there was like no one that you would class as their experience that can do this job out. He only hired young people because he didn't want experience. They were doing something new, and manufacturing and the world in general and different industries move at such a speed and they change in such incomprehensible ways that if you think outside those limitations of experience, if you just go, you know what, I have something to bring. I don't know what it is yet, but I'll figure it out. And I'll figure it out through communication. I'll figure it out through trying. The people who made this Cobot, originally there was like no kinematics for the actual thing that they were building. It took them 3 years and they threw the entire thing away. And it was like, it doesn't work. So then they just threw it away and started again. It's like, how is that not creative? How is that not like extraordinary? I'm like, you just did all that and then you threw it because it didn't work. But then they did it, works, you can buy it, blah, blah. But yeah, experience is limiting. And I think we're told that it is the be all and end all of everything. But no, it's overrated. So I think just honour the fact that you're not experienced.
That's a brilliant answer. So, closers. Do you consider yourself successful?
Yes and no. Not in the way that you would consider success. Like, I'm not rich. I don't own anything luxurious. I'm not particularly extraordinary in any way. I don't look particularly extraordinary. I'm from Birmingham, I don't sound extraordinary. I don't have any particular skills or talents that are going to blow people away. So not in that sense, but I'm 27. I tried committing suicide when I was 18. I went through a period through assault and abuse for many years, and now I'm doing a job that I love with a team that are beautiful. I get to come home every night and eat a meal that I've cooked, or Ryan might cook it, but I can eat it. I'm self-sustainable, and I have a happy sister who's safe and well and grown up. I have Ryan who's patient as anything, and I'm warm at night. So I have everything that I've ever wanted. It just looks very normal. So in that sense, yes, I am. But yeah, success is ever changing. You reach one thing, you want another. So yeah.
And the success that you've had in your life, would you attribute to hard work or luck?
I think you make your luck. So I've worked hard enough to put myself in the best position to be lucky, if that makes sense. It's been a lot of sheer will to survive, which sounds like some kind of like Bear Grylls situation, but I've worked extraordinarily hard at different things, and things that people won't see, and that's fine, don't need it. I once got told I look lucky, which I thought was a really interesting statement to make to somebody, because you've never met me before, you don't know. It was just weird. But I think I've worked hard enough to give myself the best chance at luck, and that's what I'd attribute it to. That and just sheer stubbornness.
Yep.
So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being a guest. Thank you for being so open and honest.
Thank you for having
Tell
me.
us your stories.
Traumatise you poor viewers.
No, I'm sure there's a lot of them that would love this episode. Is there anywhere that people could connect with you?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well, but I'm also active on LinkedIn, which is Ariel Win. It's a big pink banner at the top, so you'll find me. Pink, blonde. It's terrible.
Right, thank you.
Thank you so much.